Gold price. Yesterday gold gave us a bit of a dragonfly doji over here, which might indicate a bit of a turnaround from the downtrend to a new uptrend. So is gold ready to bounce? Has gold bottomed around 1900? Let's talk about that. But first, let me thank you. Thank you all for subscribing to the channel. I'm happy that I have finally reached 10,000 subscribers. Thank you for staying with me for all these years. I started making these YouTube videos I think around late 2015. I think the quality of the videos has improved since then, and of course there is always room for further improvement, so your suggestions for improvement are of course always welcome. So to celebrate this first milestone of 10,000 subscribers, tomorrow I'm going for a 10-day holidays in Vietnam. Well, actually those holidays were planned previously, but 10,000 for 10-day holidays, looks like the timing has worked out pretty well. So thank you all again. I wish you are enjoying your summer holidays, and let's jump back to the gold price. So the last time we looked at gold price was on the 19th of June over here, when I mentioned that gold price was likely to swoosh to slightly lower lows before giving us a daily cycle low, and there is a chance that we might see a relatively short intermediate cycle, meaning that the upcoming low, which might have happened yesterday, while it is a daily cycle low, it might also be an intermediate cycle low. After all, the intermediate cycle that lasted through most of 2022 was extremely long, and usually after very long cycles we do get some short cycles to average out the duration back to its typical length. But whether it's a daily cycle low that we are about to observe or an intermediate cycle low, in either case we are due for some sort of a rally. And if we are forming a daily cycle low, we'll see some sort of a rally, perhaps to test the 50-day moving average before dropping back down into that final intermediate cycle low. Maybe a false breakdown below the 200-day moving average, throw weak hands out of this trade before rallying into a new intermediate cycle. Or if we are forming this intermediate cycle low, we haven't seen that much pain yet, so perhaps another few days down to come closer to that 200-day moving average before a rally up into that new intermediate cycle. In either case, we're probably relatively close to some sort of a bottom, whether it's a short-term bottom or a longer-term low. So as I'm going to be away from computer for nearly 2 weeks, yesterday I did get back into my precious metals positions. That's mostly GDX, GDXJ and SLV. Those are the positions that I try to trade in and out with these intermediate cycles. While the positions in some of these junior metals with an outstanding long-term potential, I do hold those without much trading in and out of them. So that's my general view for gold price. Let's see what the dollar is telling us. And it looks like a few days ago over here in late June, we might have actually seen the end of the daily cycle in dollar. That's also exactly as we were expecting in our previous video about gold. I did mention that a bit of a bounce in the dollar might actually pressure gold price a little bit, which has happened. And whether the dollar has topped today or we'll still see a bit of a push higher towards the upper range of the Bollinger Bands, that of course remains to be seen. But the intermediate cycle in the dollar is already pretty old, so I don't expect the US dollar to go that much higher before dropping into the intermediate cycle low, which might actually imply that we'll see a relatively short intermediate cycle in gold, and as dollar drops down into a more significant intermediate cycle low, gold might actually rally perhaps to new all-time highs. Next, let's have a look at the optimism index and seasonality for gold. Starting with the optics. Again, in our previous video I mentioned that I didn't really want to buy gold before this optimism index drops at least below 50. We see it below 50 now. Of course, again, there is a chance that gold continues lower with sentiment coming closer to 40. That would be a slightly safer buying opportunity for any sort of a bounce in gold. But again, as I'm going to be away from computer, I entered my positions yesterday. I didn't go all in, I still have some cash on the sidelines, even within my precious metals related part of the portfolio. But in either case, with optimism index slightly below 50 at 48 right now, we might see the end of this decline and some sort of a bounce relatively soon. During the bear market in precious metals, any sort of intermediate cycle low would of course bring this optimism index all the way down to this green line or even lower. But during a bull market, even the intermediate cycle lows, never mind daily cycle lows, might actually take place with this optimism index around the level of 50, as we see happen all through 2020 and 2021. So with that in mind, we are perhaps not that far from the upcoming bounce. And lastly, looking at seasonality, it might suggest that gold does like to continue down into mid-July, and that's still possible. This is the seasonality since 2015, by the way, since the end of the previous bear market in precious metals. But what we see developing from the middle of July, again, this is simply seasonality over the last few years, we might actually have seen the low yesterday. So looking into the future, after these ongoing summer doldrums down into July, we do see a relatively strong gold price seasonally all through August and into early September, which also does align with our expectations for at least some sort of a bounce, whether it's a temporary bounce into a daily cycle or a more sustained move into a new intermediate cycle. By the way, back to you. What do you think is more likely to develop over the next few months? This blue scenario of a new intermediate cycle from very soon onwards, or this orange scenario of a short-term bounce followed by an intermediate cycle low a bit later? Let me know down in the comments below. And again, let me thank you for being here. We reached 10,000 subscribers. I'm very happy about that. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.